Hey guys, and welcome to another Update 17 video where we're going to take a look at another one of the new weapons to be released with Echoes of the Sentient, Tilragor's new sword and board, the Ack and Brunt. If you were ever looking at a weapon category that hasn't had an addition in a long time, the sword and board would be top of the list, to be honest, if people hadn't forgotten they actually existed. With only a single weapon and a single stance, it was inevitable that at some point there would be an expansion. And here we are with the Ack and Brunt, Tilragor's custom axe and shield. That is for some reason built in the Grenier lab in the dojo. Let's not even try and put logic to that, let's just say space ninjas and move on. So is this new melee actually any good? Well, with a base damage of 50, with the majority 40 coming in the form of slash, 5 for both impact and puncture, it actually boasts pretty solid base damage, which when coupled with a pretty strong 20% critical chance, 200% critical damage multiplier, makes it a fairly damaging weapon. In addition to that, it only comes with, a 10% status chance, which isn't even close to be worth modding for. Now there is one interesting thing that seems to be a feature on the sword and board weapons that is new to the way blocking works. Now, just a word of warning, this is coming from initial testing, not actually backed up with hard numbers just yet, but it does come from a fair amount of testing. Now that stamina isn't a thing anymore, blocking got a second look in Update 17, and now offers damage reduction, not just straight damage immunity, where you had the stamina before. From initial tests, it does seem the sword and board weapon offers the best damage reduction from blocking enemy fire out of any of the melee weapons. And honestly, this actually makes a ton of sense, because let's be honest, the other melee weapons you're trying to block with the blade, but with the sword and board, you're actually, you've got a shield, of course it should have increased damage reduction. It gives the sword and board weapons a role, and it's something I'm actually very happy with. It's definitely a nice change. As I say, I've got no numbers for you, and there might be a class that does give more, although I highly doubt it. So I will annotate this if this little segment turns out to be wrong. Now after all of that, the Ack and Brunt is not immune to a few problems. Well, to be honest, only one that I can really think of, and that is a fairly low base speed of just a shade over 0.8, which is by no means quick. However, with the fact it comes with a decent crit chance, it means that Berserker builds are going to be pretty quick, and really are going to balance out that low attack speed. Now in terms of stances, you've got two choices, 11th Storm that drops from Lephantis, and Final Harbinger that drops from the Drakkar Manic, on the Uranus tile set. Now most of the time stances are personal preference. Obviously there are a few that are straight up best, to be honest. This is once again the case with the sword and board, that they are pretty much personal preference. I don't really notice things like damage multipliers with the Final Harbinger stance, apart from the impending battery combo having the ability to proc fire during that combo. To me, out of the two, I actually prefer Final Harbinger. I feel the null warning and systematic shred combos very easy to pull off, they do decent damage, and seem to be fast in their own right if you just ignore the Berserker entirely. This new stance is extremely flashy, and the animations look seriously cool, but at the same time without it being unnecessary and clunky and slow. This stance gets the balance between aesthetics and functionality absolutely spot on, and is by far my favoured stance. But since they both share the same polarity, you can switch and change, and then you can figure out which one that you like best. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Ack and Brunt. Now it doesn't come with any polarities as standard, as with most of the dojo weapons, so we're going to add two former to this, which is going to be 2 dashes. Now we've got quite a few mods remaining the same between all three of our builds. We've got Final Harbinger as our stance slot. We've got Pressure Point for damage. We've got Berserker, which is going to increase our attack speed every single time we crit, which is going to work with True Seal to increase the crit to a fairly decent 32%. And Organ Shatter, which is going to increase the crit damage to a reasonable 3.8%. And we've also got Life Strike on there as well. Got a max one, so basically I channel once and get all of my health back in one go. So I don't have to constantly be channeling. I prefer that one initial hit than trying to judge it as to how much I need to be channeling to get all my health back. Now, that only leaves us with 3 elemental mods. which is pretty much seems to be what I do on most weapons these days. So we're going to mod for the heaviest of the units. We're going to go Molten Impact and Shocking Touch, which is for radiation, and Fever Strike for that extra toxic damage. For the Corpus, Northrend Shocking Touch for magnetic, and Fever Strike for the toxin damage. And in the Void, Shocking Touch and Fever Strike for corrosive, and Molten Impact for that heat damage. And if you're running corrosive projection, just switch out the Shocking Touch for North Wind and you'll get viral and heat. And this will be good for your corrosive projection Void build as well. So do I think the Ack and Brunt are worth the time, effort and the former to max? And I think I can safely say yes it is. If I'm honest, I've never liked the Silver Aegis much. It doesn't do enough damage for me to use it regularly, and the stance has never really helped that either. I felt it was kind of clunky to use. However, the actual damage output from this new sword and board, the Ack and Brunt, is absolutely, well, it's actually pretty decent. The attack speed doesn't feel like I'm in slow motion the whole time. And honestly, the flashiness of the new stance and how good I think the weapon itself looks, I can go into battle feeling like a Celtic warrior, especially if I use Valkyr's Warcry before charging in. The addition of that extra blocking damage reduction really helps me make the decision of using this over some of the other melee weapons. Now, honestly, I've never been one for melee weapons. Those of you that have been here a while know that melee weapons used to be, for me anyway, a way for me to get from A to B as quickly as possible. However, since Parkour 2.0, this is no longer a thing, and I've had to completely change the way I look at melee weapons. I'll be honest, I was concerned that with the removal of maneuverability from melee weapons, that all it's going to do is make things like the Sindo Prime or the Jack Kitag just god, and no one have a reason to use anything else. However, I think I was a little bit overcautious with thinking this. There are still plenty of decent melee weapons out there, things like, well, to be honest, the Ack and Brunt, or my personal favourite at the moment, the Karis Dagger with the covert lethality that I've been having a blast with. It's really opened other things up to being quite useful. The Ack and Brunt are solid melee weapons. They are easily the best in their class, although with only 2 in the class that wasn't particularly hard to do. They do decent damage, they're pretty quick once Berserker kicks in, and I'm really enjoying playing with them. I have to admit, in all honesty, none of the former I've done since U17 have felt wasted, or were particularly horrible to do, which is absolutely brilliant, and I think these new melee weapons are ones that I will be using fairly often. Personally, I would say they're well worth investing that couple of former into. As always guys, many thanks for watching, stay tuned for more U17 content coming in the next few days, and I shall see you in the next episode.